There it is. All right, VertiMax Nation, how are we doing today? This is the VertiMax VIVE podcast. This is Steve Leo here. I'm your host. I'm one of the master coaches for VertiMax, and today I have the man, the myth, the legend, the great Martin Rooney. So I'm going to let him give an intro because his intro is, I got a piece of paper written down, way too much stuff for me to even go over. But on a side note, I've known Martin for, I think it's been 20-something years.
Over 20 years. Well, hey, I'm glad to be here on VertiMax VIVE. And Steve, right there, for Steve to say the man, the myth, the legend is actually kind of crazy because when we first met each other, I would say it's actually good to say that I was Martin Rooney, the physical therapist. So, I had not, when we originally met, guys, we were at the golden age of sports performance, which actually wasn't even a title yet. We were at the golden age of what they were only at that point calling SAQ. They were calling speed training. They were calling it speed, agility, and quickness. And Steve and I, sometimes, this ages us and it just means we're getting old. But holy cow, when I look back on all the adventures we had and all the stuff that we learned along the way, I know we're going to cover a lot of that today. But I guess for my history, like I said, it started there, at least in the sports and fitness arena. I was a track and field athlete in college. I was a former U.S. bobsledder, and through the Parisi Speed School, which Steve and I were some of the original drivers pushing that out nationally. That is where I had the opportunity to work with NFL athletes of every major Division I sport, college kids, all the way down to, never forget, a predominance of, say, 6-year-olds. And Steve and I are going to hopefully talk about that today, too, that I think everybody gets in this industry dreaming they're going to work with pros, but it's not all as rosy as you seem. And I'll tell you what, if you want to make a greater impact, you do that with kids. And from the full circle of all the stuff that I've done, I'm a middle school and high school track coach now, too. And I think sometimes that's some of the most rewarding stuff that I do. So instead of talking about me, I want to give everybody some great stuff for today. And I'm excited to share some of the information that we have. And maybe last thing for anybody listening, guys, this is our most challenging time. In my 20 plus year history in sports, performance, and fitness, there has never been a challenge like this. We've been through recessions. We've been through the housing crisis, but there has never been something that has challenged and questioned our industry like this. And I hope today also to inspire everybody and let you know that, man, guys, the great stuff is ahead. Stick with this industry. There are people out there that still need you, and there are ways to still help them. And maybe we'll cover some of that today too.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, first off, very humble. I mean, he has a lot of great things. I want to touch upon a few of them because I think it's important for people to understand history because, in my opinion, it shapes who you are. I have a different insight. I've known you for a long time. I've seen your growth. And it was funny. I was listening to one of your old podcasts today, one with your wife. I just happened to click on it. And it just reminded me of everything you went through. So I think some people should probably hear, you were a great track and field athlete. You were at Furman. You went to the bobsled team. You also went to medical school to become a PT. You had a successful PT career. Why don't you take us from when you're a physical therapist and how you started changing into the career that you are in now?
Sure. Well, I think the biggest knowledge bomb I can drop on anybody right now, and I know Steve is pulling this one out of me, is don't spend your life doing something you don't love. And you see how I almost hinted at it a second ago. I said, guys, stick with this. If this is the career you love, if this is what you really got passion for, don't let this pandemic knock you out of it. And why I'm so passionate about that is, hey, I had other jobs. I worked in an exercise physiology lab through school. And then because the world told me, hey, you would be a great physical therapist and that would be a great job, I went to PT school. And I'm not proud to say it, but I didn't know a lot about PT. Like everybody said that was like what you should do. So I thought PT was like, I'm going to be this kind of athletic trainer hybrid and work with athletes. And when I went through all the schooling and all the work and then started my job, that's not what it was at all. I was rarely working with athletes. A lot of times spending most of my time doing things about insurance and billing people for things, I don't know, I didn't feel comfortable about, but it was a business. And that's when something interesting happened. I started going to courses, and all the courses weren't about physical therapy. They were about speed training. They were about lifting weights. They were about performance. And back then, guys, this is pre-internet. You couldn't, like, there was nothing out there. You get lucky to get your hands on some book. And man, I was so into it, and I was spending all my time doing that, and I couldn't see it. And I wish I could say I made the transition faster, but I still stayed a therapist for 3.5 years, pretty much knowing right off the bat that wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. Now, if there are any therapists listening, don't let you think that I don't think it's valuable. My education as a therapist, what I love it, and I enjoyed therapy, but it wasn't my ultimate passion. So I used what I had, and that's when I took really my first biggest leap of stress, and that was how I originally met Steve. So I met Bill Parisi on an airplane going to one of those courses in Tyler, Texas, and he said, "Hey man, we're building this thing. Why don't you come on board? And like, we got something exciting." And Steve will tell you, Bill is so invigorating, and he will get you on board with the mission that I quit my job. I moved, Steve remembers this, I moved into a guy's basement that I met through jet tickets. I sat next to him at jet games. He lived in Wyckoff, New Jersey. I moved into this guy's basement, quit my job, the 8 years of school that I went to, and we were on this 40-yard tiny track in Midland Park, New Jersey. And guys, that I believe is the first track that was ever put inside of a health club. So if you've seen tracks and turfs and all this was the genesis of that. And you know what? It was scary, but now 22 years later, I never looked back, and I really feel like I haven't worked a day since. So the message is, do what you love, do what you're passionate about, and if you push for it hard enough, it can happen.
I mean, listen, people don't understand how impressive that is. I mean, where Martin is now, I mean, he's world-renowned. We're going to get into some of that as well. He literally has spoken all over the world, spoken for big-time companies. I know you've gone in, spoken to some Fortune 500 companies. Guys, he left a career as a successful PT who make decent money and slept in a guy's basement.
Steve knows this, and he's going to joke. I took a pay cut. Don't be confused. Bill, and hey, we know Bill is the greatest guy in the world, but Bill is a savvy business guy too. Hey, it was huge risk, but again, it was the passion that drove me. So I want everybody to hear that too. Guys, it's not about the money you make. It's about, do you do what you love? And I believe if you do what you love, then you are going to make the money you deserve too. And hey, again, therapy was great. I really liked the people I worked with, but I will say that I would have never pursued it the way I pursued this, and I wouldn't have done all the things I've done since, because again, the heart of it is passion. So if anybody listening has a passion for fitness, if you got a passion for sport, chase it. Don't listen to anybody. Oh, here's the other part. My family said I was out of my mind. My mom told me, because guys, I was living at home then, and my mom said no. She was like, "No, you can't do this." And I was like, "Well, wait a minute, can I do this? Like, what do you mean?" I was only dating Amanda then. We were only dating, but so she didn't think it was a good or a bad idea. But now I wasn't really going to see her as much. There was, at least where my life was at 27 years old then, I was taking the biggest risks I ever took in my life. But now looking back, and hey, this is an important one to tell everybody. If you are nervous right now, because this might be the perfect time to go chase your passion. If you're nervous right now about it, this is the question I know now that I wish I would have asked then. And here it is. You ready, Steve? It's, what's the worst thing that can happen? Right? Like, what would have been the worst thing that could – so watch, Steve, what would have been the worst thing that could have happened? We go up, Parisi's doesn't work out. What would have been the worst thing?
Change careers, do something different.
No, I go back to being a PT. Like, there were PT jobs all over. Like, I don't know why I didn't think like that. It was like I was so scared to let go of something I really didn't want. And now looking back, I was like, man, what was I scared about in the first place? Just like go for it. And if it didn't work out, I could still fall back on that. And So I'm letting everybody know that, and I get it. Like, hey, I didn't have kids yet, and I didn't, and I didn't have a lot of the responsibilities I have now. But as Steve will tell you, that I had to make a couple more leaps like that during my career that have been some of the hardest things in the world too. But it was always about chasing the passion. It wasn't listening to what people told me, because maybe that's an important one too. Holy cow, there's so many ideas. Another one is, guys, if everybody is telling you you're crazy and it's because everybody else does something they're not happy doing, don't listen to them, right? Like, everybody that was telling me I was crazy, when I would say, well, are you happy with what you're doing? They'd be like, no. And I'm like, then why am I listening to you? Like, that's not what I want to do for the next 50 years of my life, right? And again, those adventures, like, God, man, like, it brings me back when I was getting ready for this. Guys, Steve will tell you, we had hundreds of meetings, hundreds of training seminars, all this stuff. And it was all this stuff nobody ever saw, that now I look back and I would go back and do it all again, because it was so great when to be on this adventure when we were figuring it out.
Yeah, so if you can't tell, he's passionate, guys. I worked next to him for 10 years. And one of the things I want to talk about is there's so many people getting into our industry, I think for the right reason, right? They want to help people. They want to work with, whether it be adult clients or they want to work with athletes, youth, it doesn't matter. But one of the things, I'm sure you've dealt with this, is a lot of coaches, they want that instant branding. They want that instant notoriety. And it's different because we have social media. When we started, there wasn't social media. What marketing was, putting flyers together and, licking stamps and sending them out.
That was what we would do for hours. Guys, we used to do 10,000 piece mailers that, remember, with Lee Miller. So, hey, if Lee Miller ever hears this, we spent a lot of fun times with him too. And it's like, holy cow, we used to do newsletters and coupons and all this stuff. So, but to play off what you're saying, guys, everything Steve and I have achieved, you're not seeing the 20 years that it took us to get there. And what I just told you is those 20 years are great. That's where you build it. So I don't know. I was never doing it to build a brand. We were doing it, I don't know, because we were passionate about it. So I agree. With the internet, it's changed the game. People want to accelerate faster than ever. But if I were to go back and tell myself something, I would always even tell myself then, be more patient, continue to do the work, enjoy the process. And I don't know, here would be a good one too, Steve. Everybody that says, I got to have my own brand, or I got to have my own logo, or I got to have my own stuff, I want you to ask yourself, well, why? Is it because you're trying to compare yourself with somebody else on the internet, or is that what you really want? Because I will tell you this, be careful what you wish for, but also don't let ego be the driver, right? Like, I would say, remember why you're doing what you're doing, and that brand and that stuff will happen. But to try to ram a brand on somebody that means nothing and you never go out there and do the work to build it, it's going to be really tough. So, for instance, Parisi's and Training for Warriors, there's a couple decades of so much stuff that went into it before anybody knew about it. And you got to put in that work if that's what you really want. So I think that segues off of what we said. First is, what are you passionate about? And then, if anybody's listening, a great question to ask yourself is, what do you really want? Not what the world says you should want, and not what you're comparing yourself on Instagram to says you should want. What makes you happy? What would you really want, and how do you do it? And you know what? That'll take the pressure off, because if there's one thing I've learned, comparison is the thief of joy. You spend your time comparing yourself to other people, and social media makes that easier than ever. A lot of times, I guarantee you, the people listening, sometimes you don't feel good, right? And I want, when you hear this interview today, to feel good. I want to tell you, you can go do it and make the things happen, but make the things happen that you really want, not what somebody else says you can want. So
it's funny you brought that word joy to the last podcast I did with Dan McKim, who works for Sornex. That was one of the subjects we talked about just the joy in training, what it really means to train. I mean, listen, you've trained more people than I have, but we've all worked with high-level NFL and NBA. We've done that, right? And I think, I'm not going to speak for you, but I know you well enough to know that was great. But now, dealing with people, if you want to use the word general population, or I call it people that just need help, and we're there to help them. I've seen such a transformation in you because, listen, you train the Giants, the Jets, U.S. Army, you name it. I've seen you do it. But now you're even better than you were before because your passion for helping people of any age, any discipline has been amazing. So going from training all of those great athletes, what changed? Obviously, there was a big change, but was there a trigger point? Like, what happened to make you want to really change it and go to the adult, we'll say the adult market, although I don't want to business.
Well, hey, we make an evolution, right? And hey, guys, I don't want to discount any of those things. If your dream is to work with a professional sports team or the military or whatever, hey, go for it, right? And I can only say the things I say now looking back, not forward. But I will say when I looked at myself, and Steve knows this, hey, we were training kids. We were training high-level athletes. And don't let Steve fool you guys. He had as many pros in there as I did, and sometimes I would be jealous. He'd be in there pitching with guys throwing 100 miles an hour at pros and all this stuff. So, but what people sometimes forget is, like I said, we were working with a lot of little kids. And we were working, remember, we were doing the house moms or whatever you want to call them, the weekend warriors in the mornings and different times. We were making ends meet. And it was weird that when I started, it was almost like you didn't want to do that, right? Like it was almost like, oh, how do I get rid of these people? How do I get these people off my schedule? And then it was like, man, I want to work with pros. And it was like, oh, this pro is mine. And hey, helping the NFL Combine kids was amazing. A lot of the pros that we developed really strong relationships with, it was amazing. But what I realized was it was about that relationship. It wasn't about who the person was. It didn't matter if they were a pro or not. And then here's what this one really hit me. And Steve, this is a big breakthrough when I started to make the shift. For everybody listening, training pros, that's easy. Training Olympians or people want to be Olympians or UFC fighters, guys, that's easy. I could tell them, put my shoe in a blender, chop it up and eat it. It'll help you. They'll do it. But guys, the number of those people is so small, and the number of people fighting over trying to get one of those is so large that I realized that there were so many people that built the community, so many people that they were athletes inside too that needed our help. And actually, guys, would do anything to get it, but it took more work. It was a greater challenge. And that's really where Training for Warriors was born. I was working with a lot of UFC guys. I got lucky that I was one of the original guys to be involved with the Gracie family. That led to way more. And when I started writing books about it, everybody that was writing to me about the books, few of them were fighters. It was these people. And they would say, this is amazing. This has helped me so much. And that's when I saw, holy cow, there's people that could lose 50, 60, 100 pounds. There's people that are getting off the bottle. There's people that are off medication now. There's people now that are changing their lives. And those emails of the people that I had helped became addictive. And that's really when Training for Warriors was born, that I realized there's a warrior, there's an athlete inside of everybody, and the joy is bringing it out. And bringing it out in an Olympian, it's already there, right? But man, it could be anybody. So it kind of changed me that I didn't measure myself anymore by, did I have an elite clientele going? I measured myself on how many people I was helping, and I wanted to help more people. And that was, in a weird way, that led to some of my transition from Parisi's, which, hey, for everybody listening, guys, this logo right here and the Parisi logo are the two logos that mean the most to me. The facility here where we are outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, runs the Parisi system and Training for Warriors. My kids are part of that. And we'll talk about my oldest today too, I'm sure, how far and what it's done for her. But I saw, man, for 15, 16 years, I felt like I had done as much as I could almost do in the sports performance space, but I wasn't scratching the surface in the space helping a different type of person. And that was a big part of the leap, why I then made another one of my hardest transitions in my life to training for Warriors. And again, it was about passion again, but it was also this time about purpose. So those are two biggies. It's interesting how this is coming out, but first passion is what always led me, but then it was purpose. Like, how many people could I affect? How many people could I help, you know? And I saw this blue ocean of new people that like needed that help again. And it was like a restart. It was that invigoration again that we had in the late 90s and early 2000s. And around 2013, 14, I made that transition again. And again, it was scary. It led to another crazy move that everybody said I was out of my mind and nuts. But I never looked back. And when I look going into 2021 now, which is hard to believe, again, I know it was the right decision for me.
Yeah, I mean, guys, listen to that again. I mean, he went through it twice. You know, he was a PT, lived in the guy's basement, worked for Parisi's, and then, you know, when we started franchising back 04, 05, you know, Martin was the leader of all that. You know, he was in charge of the entire franchise company, left that when we had, I think, 60 or 70 locations at the time to start his training for Warriors, moved down to Cornelius, North Carolina, beautiful, right outside Charlotte. You didn't want to stay in Jersey anymore. But again, big. I remember, you know, you going through that. That was another big leap of faith, and it's something I want a lot of young coaches to hear is look at all the things that he's done. It's not by accident, guys. It's a lot of hard work, and I'm sure he'll use the word sacrifice at times because he had a family at the time. It wasn't just you anymore.
No, guys. Hardest move thing I ever had to do in my life. I didn't just have a family. I had 4 daughters. Right? So I had 4 daughters. Steve's still behind me on that one. And, you know, and the joke I make right now is my kids are getting older. I might say, hey, Steve, you know what I feel like every day? I feel like I'm at a hockey game. And they'll understand this joke, but it's coming for him soon too. You know, I'd say, because a hockey game has 3 periods and a whole lot of fighting, bro. And that's like what's going on in my life now. But my kids were young. Yeah. Hey, New Jersey is where I was born and bred. And, you know, I had lived in the South. There was at least the luxury that the facility here had both programs going. But what a lot of people don't know, this was right at the time of the housing crisis. We moved on like 40 days notice because we had an opportunity to get in the house that I'm sitting in now. But guys, we couldn't sell our house in New Jersey. Nobody was buying the house in Fairlawn. I had wiped out everything I had ever saved to take a risk and take the biggest loan I ever could imagine taking to get in the house now. So I moved down here, took my 4 kids out of school mid-year. My wife didn't want to leave. She's from New Jersey. We emptied everything. And my family, now you ready for this? The first time I did that move, my mom just said, no, you're crazy. This time, all my family told me I was ruining everybody's life. And, so now looking back, guys, you know, but those nerves and that fear, it drove me. It drove me that I had to succeed. I couldn't go backwards. I was going to do whatever it took to be successful at that point. Now, I'm not saying go take crazy risks. You got to take calculated risks, but that fear and energy, it can sometimes be a good thing if you use it right. So just like right now, you might be feeling some fear because of the pandemic but use that energy right now to do what you can do, control what you can control. And you know what? That's what I did. And it took about 6 months, but we finally sold the house in New Jersey. And man, after, I started building, training for Warriors, that led to where we are today. And it's interesting because now, my kids, they don't really remember it, but it was probably the most stressful time in my life. But again, it was calculated. I knew what I could do. I wasn't just doing something crazy, but I had to do the work. And again, for anybody listening, guys, you got to do the work. Like nothing. What I always say is, if you want to amass net worth, you got to first amass network. Like you gotta do a lot of work. You got to get around the right people, and then you'll eventually be successful. And yeah, it's kind of funny for me and Steve to do this, because when I think of Steve, I still see us back. We're 20-something years old. Like, and this guys, we were both not married. It was like there was a lot of fun and just crazy times. We were kids, and I still see it like that. But man, 20-something years later now, I also see these lessons that we're pulling out today. And if you're not where we are. Like, hey guys, Steve and I are going on 50. That's like, it's kind of crazy.
You're a little ahead of me.
Like, I can't even like spit that out. But the whole thing, because I know, guys, if you're watching us, you probably think, wait a minute, those guys can't be over 20 years old, right? But definitely, again, passion, purpose. And like Steve said, and you're gonna have to make some sacrifices too.
I think that's the biggest thing, seeing how your company has grown. I think everyone should hear a little bit about that. Again, you started it really in Fairlawn as an idea when you started working with the MMA fighters. This is really, guys, when UFC was kind of at that tipping point when it was just about ready to take off and the Gracies were there. And, Martin found a niche, right, because there weren't a lot of people working with MMA fighters, but really transformed into this adult business. And Training for Warriors, to me, became the #1 adult fitness company out there. There's other companies we know, but I witnessed it from the inside and the outside as well. I actually had one in my facility for a little while. And now if you look, how many locations are you up to now all across the world? Like
well, that number is fluctuating right now, obviously.
Yeah, a little crazy.
And hey, with all the challenges that we're experiencing now, I would say at its zenith, we were at 300 locations in over 30 countries around the world. Now, I hope everybody can appreciate, maybe this is a story of honesty right now too. Right now, it's not just the United States as we go into this second wave, and now we are having lockdowns. I just got, what my phone blows up about all day is, now second series of shutdowns in all these different countries, and how some countries never opened back up in the last 10 months. So I hope everybody can appreciate that right now. I still want to say we have those numbers, but we are on hold with a lot of people because they don't know what is going to happen. So we need that vaccine going. But yeah, at its highest when the facilities were open and people were able to go and go to fitness facilities, say previous to these, last 10 months, there were hundreds of facilities around the world. And man, it was my greatest pride to see and hear from all these people that were training in this system that, like you said, started with a handful of Brazilian fighters that everybody, again, ready for this one, told me I was out of my mind, right? Like, hey, I had some meetings there in Midland Park and Fairlawn where it was, hey, man, you're wasting – why are you wasting all your time on these guys? This stuff is crazy. They're scaring people in the building. Get them out of here. And now the joke – and Bill and I talk, when we talk all the time, he'll always go, see, I told you it was going to be big. I told you it was going to be big. And but yeah, so guys, I was I can't say pre-UFC. It was a handful of years after the UFC was still a banned televised event. It was not something people knew about. It was never something people could envision women doing. And but I was one of the original students of Renzo Gracie in Manhattan, training in it just because I had a passion for it. I never had a vision that this was going to be what it is today. It organically grew that way. I think that's what made it so great, that it was what people wanted. It wasn't something I made up and then we thrust it on people. Same thing with Parisi's. Parisi's wasn't, hey, here's all this crazy stuff and people should do it. It was, there was a demand for it and the demand grew and we satisfied that, and like you said too, it was a niche. Nobody was doing it. I can say with confidence, no one was training fighters in 97, 98 when Renzo Gracie asked me to travel with the team to events and small shows and eventually around to Japan, remember, like 8 times a year. And that grew into a training philosophy. That philosophy led to a system. And then that system, because so many people wrote me about the books, I realized it wasn't just for fighters. It was the effectiveness of what it was doing to help people lose fat and build muscle, that we were on to something. And that's maybe the thing I pride myself most about it, is it's real training. You know that. Like it's training that works. It's training that is safe and effective and was not just to be crazy or do something so nuts to make it hard on somebody. And I think that's another part of how it did what it did. But I'll say this, when I called it Training for Warriors in the beginning, people, again, you're crazy. That word is scary. That's too tough. And now there's nothing I like more than knowing that like more than 65% of the people that use Training for Warriors are women. Right? Like I remember people telling me no women will ever do it. Nobody wants to call themselves a warrior. And still, if anybody wants to do a little Instagram search and you see all the pages of the facilities out there, when you see those class shots and what's going on, man, it's a whole lot of women that are feeling like warriors. And that includes my wife and my oldest daughter, where they train in it, now every day. And it works.
Yeah, guys, I mean, listen, it works not only from a science and program standpoint, because I know a lot of trainers, that's what they want, right? They want to know about the training and the science. But I'm going to tell you right now, because, again, we have a personal relationship, so this is definitely different. But it's the motivation and the passion is why that program works. I'm sure Martin would agree with me. Yeah. And that is what, to me, has led to your success.
Well, yeah.
Great, but what you do when you stand in front of a group and get them to believe. You said that word believe a million times. I heard you say that in front of people. I think that's why some women are getting excited about it, because sometimes they don't believe when they go to the gym. They don't believe that they can lose weight. They don't believe they could feel better about themselves. And that's everyone, right? That's not just women. That's everybody in America. I mean, especially what we're going through now. So I want to get into the book a little bit. Martin's written multiple books. What are you up to, 6, 7? I'm not even sure how many.
Well, it's 11 books, but
11. I'm close.
But with the major publishing houses, yeah it's but the latest. That's the biggie that I'm so excited about now. But even before we go on that, it's a perfect segue right now. You know what you were saying, because I want to say this, Steve. You said hey, it was almost as if hey, it is a great system, but it's this passion and getting people to believe. And you know what I call that? I made a leap, right? So we're talking about the leap today. You just said it. A lot of trainers out there, they want exercises that, they, like we did. We wanted to know the next push-up drill. Wow, how do we do the wall drive right? We dug deep into the training and the science. And I believe you got to do that. But in order to make it ever effective, in order for anybody to ever do it, yeah, you got to have the passion. And really, and what does the passion do? It gets them to do that stuff, and that's what I call coaching. And so here's an interesting thing I always say. If you said to me, Steve, if you said, hey, Martin, what would you rather have? Would you rather have a program that has great training and efficacy and science? Or would you want to have a training program that has great motivation and community and belief, right? And passion. And here's what I would say. Ready? Both, baby. Why can't you have both? Like surf and turf, right? So if somebody said, hey, Steve, do you want steak or do you want lobster? You could still say both. So we built the system and we know it. But then what I stacked on that, what I realized was one of my real secrets of how I did what I did and what's on my resume, I couldn't have done it without the PT background. I couldn't have done it without all the training knowledge. But the only reason it happened is because of that passion and that belief. And that's what coaching is. And that's what, my newest book, Coach to Coach. So if somebody's a coach and you didn't read this, you got to do it. It's on sale on Amazon for $15. You got to, you got to have it. But I will say that is now what I kind of call the cherry on top. So and for you too, Steve, as we moved through this thing, first we had to learn all the stuff. You did. Yeah, we had to go through all the stuff. And guys, people will never know. We used to do, you remember the ladder seminars? I remember we were doing ladder seminars and warm-up seminars for days straight. My calves were so locked up, I couldn't even walk. We would just be sitting and deep diving into stuff like the 5-10-5 or, again, lifting weights for kids. And you got it. So guys, you got to do all that, but no one will ever care to do it if you're not super fired up about it. And so what am I saying there? Once you got all that, you got to also be a great coach. And that's what I saw was missing. And that's what I really try to help all the coaches and trainers training for warriors really understand and become. Because if you don't think of yourself as a coach, you just think of yourself as a knowledgeable guy, man, you're probably never going to help as many people as you could, right? So
I assume, listen, Martin's written a ton of other books that you guys should definitely check out, but this last book is a little different. Obviously, it's talking about coaching, but this is more about a story. Yeah. Where your other books, I would say, were more informational based, right? There's a lot of information, a lot of research you put into it.
Yeah.
This one was a little bit, in my opinion, after reading it, a culmination of your life as a coach. I definitely saw pieces in there. Again, I know you on a personal level. So I picked out, I'm like, I kind of know what he's referencing there, but it hits you in the face as far as what it means to be a coach. And I'm a coach now. I'm a teacher in a school, but it's funny when I teach my PE classes, they call me, I'm the fitness guy, right? Because I do fitness. They still call me coach. I'm not Mr. Leader. I'm a coach. And to me, that is the best title I've ever owned, besides being a dad and a husband. And what really motivated you to put this all down in this story format? Yeah,
well, it's funny. It's that book today. You know what a word is today for me, Steve, that I'm getting from this? Departures. Right? Like, look, I made a departure from physical therapy up there to Wyckoff and Midland Park. I made a departure down here to North Carolina from New Jersey. And I had written a number of books. But this book is a departure for me. Right? Like, yeah, I had written these technical books. I had written, these books that in many ways, some of them were really deep in exercise. Now, they have great information and people love them, right? But I knew I couldn't write a technical book on like coaching. Coaching isn't if this, then do that. It's not like, oh, they say this, now do that. Like you can't say reps and sets. Oh, say this 3 times, now do this for 4 sets. You're going to have a great thing. And all the stuff that I was collecting about coaching, all the lectures that I was given on coaching, everybody was going nuts for them. And people would keep saying, they'd say, you got to write a book on this, man. You got to write a book on this, which, by the way, because guys, Steve's wife helped me a lot, during this process, because she's involved with books, which is pretty funny. She'll be the first one to tell you, go write a book on that is easier said than done. Like that's like not easy, right? But I said, what do people really love about my lectures? They love the stories. And then I said, well, why don't I tell a story and then have more stories in the story? And that's where Coach to Coach was born. And here's what's interesting, guys. I just wrote it. I didn't have a book deal. I went backwards on this, which, Steve's wife, Michelle, will tell you. Usually people come in with an idea. That's what I did with my other books. I had an idea, and then you shop some publishers, and then somebody will bite on the idea. This one was a passion play again for me. I wrote it, not even caring if I had anybody to publish it or not. I would have done it myself. And guys, the day I finished the final period, I knew I had something. I knew it was my best book, and it was my most important book. And Steve is absolutely right. I can't say I wouldn't call it a biography, right? But everything in the book happened. Every bit in the book is real. Every conversation was real. And that's what I mean. Steve knows, because some of them, he saw those. Those are based off real guys that I worked with. But it was a challenge for me to write about fictional characters and a fictional scenario and put it into a big story that people could read quick, but never be the same after they read it. And in particular, never be the same coach or parent after they read it. That's what I was shooting for. And it's pretty interesting that, there's already like tens of thousands of copies out there. This week it got printed in German. So now I got all these German people write me that they're going nuts. But I'll say this again, if you're a coach and you haven't read it, is it the be all end all? No, you got to still read more stuff, but there's no way you can't have this. You can't not have it on your shelf if you want to call yourself a coach. And like Steve said, being called a coach when I'm coaching my kids, it's the thing probably most besides dad that I take pride in of a title. And you can't read this one without feeling that. But I hope, like most people, they get this, like, it's almost like they walk into a room that they never knew was in their house, and they're like, holy cow, I got a lot more to learn. And it was all based off not just the stuff I did, but the mistakes I made so the reader doesn't make them, right? So it was my, I guess, offering to coaches out there, to make them better, because I understand that if they are, they're going to help more people. And it was a pleasure to write, and it's so cool that it's out there now. And as I mentioned to Steve today, it's doing so great that the sequel has begun. So I am starting a sequel. Steve will be probably one of the first people to see it before that is done. But now I got to write it. Like again, so go write. People tell me, hey, go write the sequel. Like, what's next? I'm like, man, guys, that's not easy. Like, like what is it? It's like, and guys, this one is 185 or 88 pages, but most people read it in like 2 sittings. And the biggest compliment I've gotten is people go back and read it again, and they keep pulling different stuff out of it. So it's exactly what I wanted to hear. And, it's tough because when you put something out there, you never know how people are going to respond. But there's already 350 like 5-star reviews on Amazon from around the world. And that tells me I know it hit the mark for sure.
I think the biggest thing that it hit the mark on, the key word there, we did this a long time ago, and I know you do it now, is storytelling and really learning how to tell stories. And if you remember, I remember any coach I remember, they told stories, whether they were real or not, right? They don't always have to be a true story, but that's how you connect with, it could be kids or adults, because one, it humanizes you. But 2, if it can motivate them, or it doesn't have to be motivation, what this book did was it made you think. Yeah. I've read other coaching books that made me be motivated to be a coach. This made me take a step back and reflect, but also being able to maybe share these type of stories with not only your adults, but all the teams that you work with. I mean, guys, I worked with high school teams. I remember when you worked with a high school team, Wayne Hills, when they were on that 56 game?
Yeah, second longest winning streak in New Jersey state history, and we didn't lose for 5 years, man. And I'm still bitter about it because they ended up throwing St. Joe's, which was a private school, at us, and that ended the streak, which we didn't, and we lost because we went for 2 and could have won it. And not that I was passionate about that, but like those, hey, a lot of that stuff you're talking about were things that's what I learned by working with those teams, particularly that one. But guys, yeah, Steve and we would be passing sometimes, because remember when we had Closter and then Morris Plains, and we're just passing everywhere. But a lot of times it was going to work with all these teams and those high school teams out on the fields, and we would all come back and we'd have no voices left. We'd be sunburned but that's where I learned so much of the lessons. That's why I wrote, like, hey, the final thing, listen to this. Under my bio, it said, hey, having trained NFL, UFC, Major League Baseball, NBA, and Olympic athletes, but Martin learned the most from coaching his middle school and high school teams. And I thought that was important to put in there, under the bio, because it was the truth. Like, that's where I was basing that. And I didn't want people to think not only that, it's only important if you train high level, but that your greatest lessons are going to be coming from the people that you help at the beginning of their career, not at the end. Right. So.
And listen, people need to know this. You became better at storytelling, better at public speaking, because you did it. You did it a million times. I mean, how many times we could talk about forever about doing our free classes on Monday and Wednesday nights, and we did free seminars, and then Martin would speak for teams, and then you eventually would doing Perform Better and all kinds of stuff. I mean, Martin has literally spent hundreds of thousands of hours speaking.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
people now than it was when I met him 20 years ago. No, not knows that, right?
Yeah, you bring it up like, hey, that's another one for anybody listening right now. Hey, I wanna do what you do. I want to be a speaker. I want to get paid to speak. What Steve mentioned briefly, but what was the heart of how we, I believe that we built Harises, because if we hadn't done it, it wouldn't have. We created a thing called an orientation. And really what it was, guys, we were at a time, parents thought, wait a minute, speed training for kids, you're either fast or you're not. And wait a minute, lifting weights for kids or girls, like you're going to hurt them, stunt their growth, or make my daughter into Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's what people thought in the late 90s, early 2000s. And what we did is we created what I always call a Broadway show. And then we had to figure out marketing and ideas and spread the word to get parents from the local communities to come in. And it was every Monday and Wednesday night at 8 p.m., which, by the way, is hard to get people to do when they're busy. And we started it, and we did that for years. Guys, it was free. It was about an hour and a half long. It taught me about speaking. It taught me about selling. And that was like, we did hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of those. And I'll say this, which I don't know if I've ever told Steve this. Every Monday and Wednesday night at about 7:58, before I walked through that door, in Fairlawn into the room, I was always nervous. Like I felt like I was gonna throw up. Like I had the presentation butterflies every time. But you know what? By putting myself through that for so long, never worrying about what I was doing, but trying to just influence people about something I believed in, that was the origin story of how I became a speaker that now 35 countries later. And, I presented in Wembley Stadium for like all these people for Virgin, which, Branson's company. There was some big stuff that have happened, but it all started by doing so much stuff for free. And, so I would definitely say that it was a whole lot of years before I ever got like paid to give a talk. And I think when I did, it was like $100 and I couldn't believe it, so it was, yeah.
You put the time in. I think hopefully everyone not only gets your passion, if they don't get that, I mean, they're not listening, but they need to understand that you are where you are because of all the hard work you put in. Hard work, that's an easy thing. A lot of people say, oh, I work hard. You worked hard. You sacrificed. You did things that were uncomfortable. Public speaking was not what you were comfortable with. You weren't as great as you are now. You made mistakes. I think people need to hear, and you know what? It's okay to make those mistakes. It's okay. Same thing with me. I learned from guys like you and Bill and other people as well. And I'm a better speaker now because I wasn't a good speaker 10 years ago. Now I've been able to speak at some bigger conferences. And is it a notch in our cap? Yeah, it's always great. But what's great for me, and I know you say the same thing, it allows us to affect more people.
Yeah.
We just keep getting opportunities to affect more people. And the one person I want to talk about today, obviously, we have some big news in your family. On a personal note, your daughter just signed to go to Notre Dame to run track. So first off, congratulations to you and your family. And, I can't believe it, Sophia, when I was, at your house and she was eating Cheerios, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
Notre Dame. So I want to touch on that. It's so amazing. So again,
sometimes I can't even believe it, and we've texted back and forth and hey, we've texted back and forth for so many years because I know your daughter is involved so similarly in track too. And guys, Sophia, from the time she could walk, I was bringing her to Parisi's and on breaks or in between all that stuff I was doing, I would have her running on the track and she would see all of us, Steve, all the trainers, we were the superheroes to her. And I don't know, it was, if someone were to ask me like, hey, how do you do it? How do you someday get your kid to get into Notre Dame or wherever the dream is? Hey, I would say, we just always made it part of our lives. I would definitely be cautious to say, I never pressured her. Say I have 3 other daughters and they're not involved in track. One is in swimming and that's what she's in. So the first thing that I would tell everybody is you gotta find what the kid is passionate about. You gotta find what the kid, maybe what you believe they have the skills to be good at. And then you just gotta nurture it. And Steve will tell you when she was very little, she was fast. Like she crawled fast, she ran fast. People used to line up on the fence on the track at Parisi's and they would pause and watch her run. So there was just something about her and I saw it. And then we just started to foster it. And hey, luckily I got to be her coach and her dad. I believed in the programming that we were doing. And now 18 years later, I still don't believe it, Steve. And, so this week or last week was National Signing Day and she had a big event at her high school. And I'll say this, it was the super positive thing I needed. It was the super positive thing she needed, missing her junior year. And now senior year is online. I can't imagine, but we never stopped working, right? So that might be my biggest lesson I can give everybody. Guys, I always heard that from this Russian coach that I had, they would say, you give me 18 years and I'll give you a world champ. And hey, Sophia's not a world champ, but 18 years, we never stopped. We didn't let this pandemic stop us. We just kept training harder. When everybody else was sitting back, we leaned in, right? And I'll tell you what, it paid off. And Steve, I'm going to let you in on this. I didn't really tell her much, but I didn't think it was going to happen. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen. Like, I started to get really scared. Like, I was always telling her, hey, you stick with me. This is going to work. You'll see. If this is your dream, it's going to happen. And she made a Notre Dame vision board, and we had this stuff up on the wall. And then I started to realize when all this was going down, holy crap, like, I got this kid really believing right now. And I don't know if I believe it. Like, I don't know. Coaches aren't calling anybody back. Universities are cutting track and field programs now. There wasn't even a season. I don't know. Is she good enough? Is somebody going to take interest? It was keeping me up at night, and but I couldn't show it. And that was another big lesson that, like, guys, coach got to believe before the athlete will or your kid will. And we just kept working. But I'll tell you what. She called us upstairs one night. She was really scared, and she called us upstairs. And Amanda, the way she called me after she went up there, I thought something was wrong. I went running upstairs. Sophia was crying. Amanda had this look of panic on her face, and she showed me her phone. She went like this with her phone, and she put her phone in my face, and it said, welcome to the Fighting Irish. I want to be the first one to welcome you to Notre Dame. And she was crying, and that showed me in that moment she was really scared too. She didn't know if it was going to happen either. And I always say we've had some great sports moments and hugs, but our whole family was in this giant huddle, all hugging and like crying. And that never happens. For everybody listening, same theme of the rest of the story today. Just like the speaking stuff we just talked about, just like all the stuff I talked about with my history. That never happens if you don't put in the work and have a dream and believe for a really, really long time. And but it is my crowning moment as a coach. It was my crowning moment as a dad that everything that I believed in and everything I've been teaching, it works. And man, maybe the hardest place that it works is in your own house.
Yeah.
Right. And it did. And she's an inspiration to her sisters and to us. And man, I don't know. It was like I said, at this really tough time, it was one of the biggest things. And what it taught me again as a coach, and that's a major lesson from this book, is that you're not a coach until you're way, way more fired up about the people you work with than you are about your own self. And maybe that's something to, again, now go back to. Steve knows, and I'm not sometimes proud to say it. When I started, I was like way more focused on me. I was focused on what I was learning. But now I see it now. I was selfish like that because I had to learn all that stuff or I couldn't give it away. But I wish I was even better about it than I am now. But I know now, guys, it's not about me as an athlete anymore, right? Like, because Steve remembers, I went back out and tried out for the bobsled when I was still there in 2000. I already been working there, and I went back up using this stuff. It was about me then, and we were like powerlifting then and all that other stuff and putting it to the test. Whereas now, man, that night, man, I didn't care nothing about me. It was all about her, and like that is like what coaching is all about.
That's awesome. I think we got to on that. I'm fired up already. Well, we went an hour fast. I mean, we could have went.
Right? I didn't even look at the time when Steve was when we talked. I said, "What's this going to be?" And he's like, like 30 minutes, and we'll go. And I just felt like that was 10 minutes, guys. Yeah. Everybody listening,
but we can definitely do more. I mean, let everybody hit you up. I know they posted up on the chat. Hit you up. It's the Martin Rooney. Right, use your handle pretty much everywhere on Instagram, Facebook Live. Also.
Yeah, so the Martin Rooney on Instagram, and I'm always putting up cool, inspirational stuff. It's just Martin Rooney on Facebook. Find me there. That would be stuff. Oh, and I have a thing. I have a little page called a group that I started called Coaching Greatness, and I always put some really good coaching stuff, just about coaching centric lessons in there too. So I think everybody would probably like that stuff as well. But I'm always putting stuff out there. So if you enjoyed this today, let Steve and the people at VertiMax know about it, and we'll do another one, because we were like just kind of this was like a catch up today. There's like a lot of, we were just scratching the surface.
But yeah, we'll definitely get you on again. And professionally, thank you so much for being on here, and personally, thank you again. I value our friendship, and so happy for your family, and what you're going through has been difficult. But like you said, you had a nice little crowning jewel last week, and let's keep this going for the rest of your family. And I'll be hitting you up for some advice. My daughter's a freshman this year, and I'm in it too, so I understand.
Now, my pleasure. And hey, one last thing, Steve and I, we had this big thing planned, guys. Which remember, it was like Steve was bringing his whole team down, and they were going to be in a meet with our team, and we got it all okayed, and it was going to be this incredible thing, and we were going to all coach together. And man, I almost forgot about that. That guys, that was right at when this was all happening. Like, so how the pandemic really started for me was when Steve called and said, man, I don't know if this is going to happen now. I don't. And then when it got canceled, that made the pandemic really real for me. I don't know about you, but that was like the first thing on my board that kind of got canceled. Then everything did. But nah, man, I hope we get to pull that off someday.
Yeah, I think it'd be great. And I know Max would love to have you on again. And keep up all the great success. I'm sure everyone will watch us a few more times, and let's keep training for where it's going. Thank you again, Martin. I really
you got it, Steve. See ya.
See ya.